My name is Father Antonio Benedetti. I am 72 years old now, and I have served as a Catholic priest for 47 years. But I must confess something that brings me deep shame. There was a period when I completely lost my faith in God and was ready to leave the priesthood forever. It was October 2006, and I was 54 years old. I had been struggling with a crisis of faith for 3 years, watching evil triumph while good people suffered. Then I met a 15-year-old boy named Carlo Acutis in his hospital room, just days before his death. What he told me seemed impossible, the desperate words of a dying child clinging to religious fantasy. But 3 weeks after Carlo died, the most extraordinary miracle occurred. Every morning for 6 months, the large bronze crucifix in my church began weeping real tears. Not once, but every single morning, at exactly 6 a.m., witnessed by hundreds of people. And those tears, when tested by scientists, were found to contain healing properties that medicine cannot explain. I was ordained in 1978 at age 26, full of passion for God. For 25 years, I truly believed I was doing God's work, maintaining unwavering faith in divine love. But by 2003, cracks appeared in my spiritual foundation. I watched good people suffer while evil prospered. The breaking point came when my sister Maria died in a car accident caused by a drunk driver. She was 45, a devout Catholic mother of 3. The drunk driver survived. At Maria's funeral, I realized I no longer believed anything I was saying. For the next 3 years, I went through the motions while spiritually dead inside. By October 2006, I had secretly decided to leave the priesthood after finishing the year. I told no one about this decision. The hospital visit. On October 8, 2006, I received a call from Sister Maria Rossini, the chaplain at San Gerardo Hospital. "Father Antonio," she said, "there's a young patient here who has specifically requested to see you. His name is Carlo Acutis, and he's dying of leukemia. The family said he insisted on speaking with the priest, who has lost his faith." I was stunned. "Sister, what do you mean by that?" "I don't know, Father. Those were the exact words the boy used. He said he needed to speak with Father Antonio Benedetti, the priest who has lost his faith, but doesn't know that God hasn't lost faith in him." How could this boy know about my crisis? I had told absolutely no one about my struggles or my plans to leave the priesthood. Curious and disturbed, I drove to the hospital that afternoon. Sister Maria met me at the entrance to the pediatric oncology unit. "Father, I should warn you," she said as we walked down the hallway. "This boy is unusual. There's something about him that affects everyone who meets him. Nurses who have worked with dying children for decades say they've never encountered anyone like Carlo." She led me to room 307. When I entered, I was immediately struck by the atmosphere. Despite the medical equipment and the obvious signs of serious illness, there was a peace in that room that seemed to emanate from the bed itself. Carlo Acutis was thin, pale, bald from chemotherapy, clearly very ill, but his eyes were the most alive, aware eyes I had ever seen. There was something ancient in those eyes, something that seemed to see far more than any 15-year-old should be able to see. "Father Antonio," he said, his voice weak but clear, "thank you for coming. I know this is difficult for you." I sat down beside his bed, studying this remarkable boy. "Hello, Carlo. Sister Maria said you wanted to speak with me, though I'm not sure why." He smiled gently. "Because God sent me to give you a message that will restore your faith forever. And because tomorrow, when I'm no longer here, you're going to need to remember everything I tell you." I felt a chill run through me. "What do you mean, when you're no longer here?" "Father, I'm going to die tomorrow night, October 12th, at exactly 6:37 p.m. But my death isn't the end. It's the beginning of the most beautiful miracle you'll ever witness." The impossible prediction. I was taken aback by Carlo's matter-of-fact discussion of his own death, but there was no fear in his voice, no sadness, only a serene certainty that somehow made his words more disturbing rather than less. "Carlo," I said gently, "you shouldn't think about such things. The doctors are doing everything they can to help you." He smiled again, that peaceful smile that seemed to come from some inner source of joy. "Father Antonio, you've been a priest for 28 years, but you stopped believing in God 3 years ago when your sister Maria died. You think God abandoned you, but you're wrong. He's been waiting for the right moment to show you that miracles are real." My blood went cold. I had never spoken to anyone about Maria's death being the cause of my crisis of faith. This information wasn't public knowledge. "How could you possibly know about my sister?" I whispered. "Because Jesus told me," Carlo replied simply. "He's been showing me things during my illness, and one of those things is your broken heart. He wants me to tell you about the miracle that's going to happen after I die." I felt anger rising, the same anger I had felt toward God for 3 years. "Young man, I appreciate your faith, but I've prayed for miracles for decades. They don't happen. Good people suffer, bad people prosper, and God remains silent." Carlo's expression became more serious. "Father, starting exactly 1 week after I die, the bronze crucifix in your church, the large one behind the main altar, is going to begin weeping real tears. Every morning at 6 a.m. for 6 months, that crucifix will cry, and those tears will have healing powers that science cannot explain." I stared at him in disbelief. That's impossible. Bronze doesn't produce moisture, and crucifixes don't cry." "You're right," Carlo said calmly. "What I just told you is scientifically impossible. But when it happens, when you see bronze eyes weeping real tears, when you watch people being healed by touching those tears, you'll know that God never abandoned you. You'll know that your sister's death had a purpose you couldn't see, and you'll understand that faith isn't about understanding God's plan. It's about trusting that He has one." I was torn between fascination and skepticism. Even if such a thing were possible, why would God choose to work through a crucifix in my church? "Because," Carlo said, "you need to see a miracle that can't be explained away, dismissed, or rationalized. When that bronze Christ weeps in front of hundreds of witnesses, when scientists test those tears and find healing compounds that don't exist in nature, you'll have evidence that faith and reason aren't enemies. They're partners in discovering truth." The final conversation. Carlo continued speaking with remarkable composure for someone so young facing death. "Father, there's something else you need to know. Among the people who will be healed by the tears from your crucifix will be Mrs. Elena Marchetti, who lives on Via Roma. She has bone cancer that the doctors say is terminal. When she touches the tears on December 15th, she'll be completely healed. Her doctor will find no trace of cancer in her body." The specificity of his prediction was unsettling. Not vague promises of eventual healing, but precise details about who, when, and what would happen. "Why are you telling me these things?" I asked. "Because when these miracles happen exactly as I've described them, you'll know they weren't coincidences or natural phenomena. You'll know that a dying 15-year-old boy couldn't have orchestrated events involving bronze crucifixes and cancer healing. You'll know that God is real, that He works in ways beyond our understanding, and that your calling as a priest isn't finished." Carlo paused, gathering strength to continue. "And Father, when people ask you if the weeping crucifix is real, when skeptics try to debunk the healings, when scientists struggle to explain the impossible, remember this conversation. Remember that sometimes God chooses the most unlikely messengers to deliver the most important truths." "But why me?" I asked. "Why should God care about the faith of one broken priest?" Carlo's eyes filled with compassion. "Because broken priests can become the most powerful witnesses to God's healing power. When you stand before your congregation 6 months from now, with your faith restored, when you tell them about the miracles you've witnessed, they'll know that if God could restore your faith, He can restore anyone's hope." I stayed with Carlo for 2 more hours, amazed by his serenity and wisdom. When visiting hours ended, he took my hand with surprising strength. "Father Antonio, promise me something. When the miracles begin, when the tears start flowing and the healings occur, don't try to hide them or minimize them. Let people see. Let them touch the tears. Let them witness healing. The world needs to know that God is still working miracles." "I promise," I said, though I wasn't sure I believed any of what he had told me would actually happen. Carlo died the next day, October 12th, 2006, at exactly 6:37 p.m., just as he had predicted. The week following Carlo's death was the longest of my life. October 19th arrived, exactly 1 week after his death. I woke up early and found myself walking to my church before dawn. At exactly 6 a.m., something extraordinary happened. I noticed moisture on the bronze Christ's cheek, real tears flowing from bronze eyes, rolling down metal cheeks, dripping onto the altar below. The tears continued for exactly 20 minutes, then stopped. Every morning, for the next 6 months, the same phenomenon occurred. At exactly 6 a.m., the bronze crucifix would weep real tears for 20 minutes. Word spread quickly. My church filled every morning with witnesses. Scientists found no mechanism that could produce water. Dr. Lombardi published, organic compounds consistent with human tears were detected, but no source could be identified. Mrs. Elena Marchetti arrived December 15th, exactly as Carlo predicted. She was 62, terminally ill with bone cancer. After touching the tears, her cancer completely disappeared within 3 days. Her doctor called it medically impossible. Dozens reported healings over 6 months. The Vatican investigated and concluded these were authentic miracles. My church became an official pilgrimage site. For me, the most important miracle was my restored faith. Watching bronze eyes weep real tears every morning changed my understanding of God's presence. 6 months after Carlo's death, I told my congregation about the boy who predicted everything. My ministry was transformed. Other clergy struggling with doubt come to me for counsel. In 2020, when Carlo was beatified, I testified about his predictions. Carlo died at 15, but his impact continues to grow. Every morning when I celebrate Mass, I look at the bronze crucifix that once wept healing tears and remember the dying boy who saw past my crisis to the restored priest God needed me to become. Carlo didn't just predict miracles, he helped create them. He transformed my church into a place of pilgrimage, my congregation into witnesses of the impossible, and my broken faith into unshakable certainty. Father Antonio Benedetti, Santo Stefano Church, Milan. October 2024.